DJ Static,
Professor Groove, the two originators of WeFunk. We both came to the station just like being interested in getting into radio. It was our first year at McGill. I know, like, for myself, I had a friend who already had gotten involved in radio, I think, during high school, and so he gravitated to CKUT, and that's kind of how I kind of found out about it, and ended up there on, what was it, Thursday mornings for 15 minutes doing the channels training show, and that's where I met Static, who was doing exactly the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I got interested kind of in campus community radio in Vancouver in high school, even when one of the only hip hop mix shows at the time was on the co-op radio out here called Crispy Biscuit. So that pretty much set the template. I got just basically following in the footsteps of that when I got a chance at CQT to kind of do something similar to my favorite show growing up, basically.
We just got randomly matched up to train together. I don't know if it's the same format these days for how training happens, but the people were paired up, and you would go for like a weekly 15-minute slot, just doing kind of announcements basically and playing some music for like a couple months. And like the first 4 sessions, one of the people would work the board and the other would be the host, and then after a few weeks you would switch. So we
get trained.
Yeah, and the person that was working the board got to choose the music that was going to be played like in between the announcements, and so we quickly realized that we're like our musical tastes kind of clicked, and I was like especially into funk at that time, and Static was into hip hop and funk, and what was happening in hip hop was like
a lot of sampling,
all tied up with funk and samples.
It's like at the peak of the sampling era. So
yeah, so after that, like we just we were both interested in putting together a show, and we kind of thought that we got along, so we decided to put together a proposal for a show, and that's how WeFunk was born. At that time, like CKUT already had a live stream like on Real Audio back then, but I'd been kind of, I was into tech stuff, and kind of that was an age where a lot of new things were coming available, like in line in terms of what you were able to do, and so I was learning about streaming, and I happened to be at McGill like working in a research lab, and they had a server, and I was able to like just set up our own streaming server there. And so like we really kind of like that birthed a side of WeFunk that was just kind of our own streaming operation. In high school, like my experience with college radio was just taping stuff off the radio all the time. And so once we started the show, I naturally taped, I guess I'm a natural archivist. Like I was already taping a lot of shows. So once we dipped our toes into streaming, I had all these tapes that I could digitize and set up like our own streaming station 24/7 that was just playing our small but growing archive of shows that we had done. And that's how it got started, put together a website for that. And our radio stream, through various kind of random like circumstances, ended up being listed on the Apple iTunes radio directory. Like I didn't appreciate at the time how amazing that was, like what a big thing that was for us as a platform, because the way I listed the title of the show is WeFunk, but I put 3 parentheses around it, and that alphabetized us to the top of what was then the urban category. So everyone on a Mac, would open up iTunes and open up streaming radio, which was kind of more prominent in the app back then. And we were right at the time, like you open up Urban, and we were the first one. And so like people just started listening and emailing us from corners of the world, like saying that they had discovered WeFunk. And so, yeah, like that was an amazing platform for us, like, to extend our listenership, like from beyond, the far reaches of what CKUT, like through the transmitter, but now kind of around the world, like building up an audience. At the beginning, I wasn't really watching the numbers so much. Like with the streaming radio, you see how many people are listening at any moment in time. And so it kind of went fairly quickly from like 7, up to in the hundreds. It was really more like in terms of our kind of understanding of our reach, it was really like as people started emailing us and saying where they were listening from, that we began to realize that people were actually listening, that this wasn't just some like tech experiment that, you know, would fall by the wayside, but was actually like something that was building like an audience and a relationship with people. Like people were saying, they were listening to us a lot. Like,
and then we started getting booked outside of the country, and then we realized that there's like whole communities in other countries where people listen like, in a serious way.
Yeah.
We started playing fans' weddings all over the place. Like it's a very kind of big part of a lot of people's lives, we realized over time.
One of the early kind of realizations, like there were a few kind of little things that made us kind of realize that it wasn't, how far it went. Like we had a friend who was like a drum and bass DJ who was touring around, I think, Czechoslovakia or something, and like someone put on a tape in the car and it was us. Like,
there's a lot of things like that. Yeah, people traveling like in Japan and Hawaii, just randomly hearing our voices, realize we played in cafes and like streetwear stores and stuff like that. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
We were on tour and just kind of transiting between trains, I think in Zurich or something, and walking through the tunnel from one track to another one. And someone was like walking a bike down the tunnel and doubled back. He's like, hey, we felt great.
Recognize our voices.
Recognize Mike's laugh.
It was like 10, 15 years ago. Social media wasn't so big. Our faces weren't like well known, but he knew our voices from weekly shows.
But even like thinking back over the years, you know, because we've been doing WeFunk for like 25 years.
Over 25 last fall.
Like there's errors even that I even forget about sometimes. Like I think the core essence of the show, musically and also just in terms of like the format of just how we approach doing the show, hasn't really changed much since the beginning. Like I do feel that it took us a few years to really understand and be conscious, like be very deliberate about how we put together the show. But like the recipe that we started with, like it hasn't really changed that much since the beginning. But we did, like, you know, there's an era where we had a lot of people coming in and like doing like freestyles and beatbox and stuff like that.
That was amazing. Yeah, like vocalists, like percussion, like live ciphers, just on-air ciphers.
We also started having a lot more international guests too, and so like they'll send us recorded guests, recorded sets. So that's been kind of an evolution in how we put the show together. But I think the essence of how we approach like what the show is musically, what its center is, hasn't really changed.
In the early years, like the sound of all the other kind of hip hop, soul, R&B music shows was a huge influence I found on myself. Because because Montreal as a city has such a long history of these genres, right? And as someone moving from Vancouver in like 95, just discovering that there's a whole lot of history before me and a lot of people doing it way before me. And there's kind of like I'm kind of late to the game, and I kind of respect what came before, the styles that came before, the selections and the approach to music. It's not it's interesting just to be kind of put in the context of really rich legacy when we joined CKUT.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of influence. I mean, there's a family. CKUT is a family of people doing radio, and there's certainly shows that like were influencing us like from right at the beginning. I mean, like long-standing shows like Masters of Work and Groove for sure. Ill Groove. Garden got started like around the same time.
Hidden Switches.
Lion's Den.
Kid Koala was fun.
Yeah,
being just a monster. Yeah. He's like an octopus with like 4 turntables. Or how many did we bring in? And just like a super chill, humble, like local Montrealer who's done like just big things worldwide. And he was kind enough to pass through the studio, and he was just we got footage of that, and it still wows me to this day.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a full circle moment for me, because like part of, you know, moving to Montreal and discovering kind of just the DJ culture, he was like one of the people at the center of that. And an influence on my concept of like what a DJ can do. So to have him on the show was just amazing.
Well, what comes to mind, probably Obsession, the group in Cuba that first invited us down to play at the Havana Hip Hop Festival. That's one. But music, in terms of like music discovery, like we do our research like 24/7 to have a keep like a 25-year running show fresh. We might have a direct relationship with the artist, we might not, but there's a lot of music discovery like going on constantly. There's still a lot of music I discover weekly that I want to put out, and then as long as people are receptive and people seem to be around the world, like that is that act of kind of discovering and sharing that I love so much about on the other end in high school when I was listening to college radio. So it's just kind of giving back what I soaked up like a sponge when I was younger.
And like when we've toured and moved around, like we've met so many people that are so kind of like effusive about how big a role like We Funk has played kind of musically in their lives, and we've heard a lot of people say, oh, you guys can't ever stop. I don't think that's not why I keep doing it, but like that definitely helps to know that there's people like, you know, there's people listening on the other end, and they really do kind of hunger, some really hunger for what we turn out each week. But I just love, I mean, I just love doing it. I love it's such the weekly and daily search for music, like just the process of getting excited about discovering stuff to play. But I love that discovery, and having the show means that I have an outlet for it to share it. And something about like just that being able to share great music that I think is really kind of what keeps me going.
And we're lucky too. I know a lot of like my DJ friends, especially more commercial DJs, their hands are very tied, right, in terms of what can play. But over the years we've done our show, we've built up enough trust with the community and goodwill that people actually tune in us to hear what we want to play, what we want to hear.
Yeah, it's such a
which is amazing. Like most DJs are like, requests, I got to play this, that, and the third, like at clubs. But we're like the opposite of that, and we have complete free reign, and people appreciate us for that. So well, I guess we're lucky. I still love it. There's like in terms of what keeps me going, just there's next generation too, like people who grew up on us playing like all these videos of their kids dancing to We Funk and listening. It just keeps giving, and that alone is really nice to see.
I mean, that, you know, that's CKUT, like the beauty of that format and the freedom. Like, you know, never at any point, even like when we were very green and getting started, was there any kind of like there was always support, right? But there was never kind of like trying to push us into a lane, or like, oh, you shouldn't really play that, you should play more of this. Like, it was just wide open, and so we could just find
a groove.
Yeah, absolutely.
Play what you love.
Yeah.
Play what you love, and then it'll shine through. Like people will appreciate you for what you do.
I think there's also like, you know, one piece of advice I've given to DJs, which like having come to realize how good it was for me, is like to record yourself. And like that, I think that's obvious for somebody who's already in radio. But like, I think for anyone who's DJing, like just listening back and hearing what you sound like when you're listening as a listener, which is something that you do in radio, at least if you're kind of recording your shows, is really a valuable thing. And it helps you, I think that's in terms of like the evolution of understanding what we like about the good moments in We Funk, and trying to make the show like embody those good moments, that comes from listening to it and as listening to our show as a listener, and then trying to figure out how to push it forward and make it even better. So to listen is easy. WeFunkRadio.com. We have like I said, we have our continuous radio stream, which has gone from like maybe 20 shows back at the beginning to now like well over 1,000. And we have our audio archive and track list and everything over there. You can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We Funk Radio. I feel like I'm going into my show
weekly, show closing.
But those are the essentials.
Take it home, Nick. Take it home.